I wanted to take a moment to ask you about your experience with Magic the Gathering. So how did you end up working there, and then what was it like working there? And I guess maybe like what were some major takeaways, if you don't mind sharing with me?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the story is this. So as they will tell you, I was not an employee. I was a contractor. In fact, they like don't give me recommendations to this day, being like, "We need to check a box that says you're an employee," and you're not. You weren't an employee. I'm like, "Yes, you're right." I was a
Oh,
contractor
jeez.
for them, and I wrote, whatever, employment law. The lawyers understand. It's fine. Like I don't begrudge them for it. But I went to their large scale tournament events, Grand Prix, Pro Tour, all of those, and wrote coverage.
Mhm.
And that morphed into then taking photos, that morphed into when streaming started to become popular or possible, I guess. Since I had worked in television and film and production, I kind of helped coordinate everything. And I was basically one of like the admins who helped create the run of show and those sort of how you literally create a physical stream in a job site, and get the information where it needs to be. So that was kind of what I did for them. And I did that for 12 years. And, it was incredible. The contract nature of it was incredible because some years, if I had a full-time job, say at WWE or was in a big thing at law school, then I would take fewer gigs and I would maybe work once a month. But then if in the lean years when I was, say, looking for a job or figuring something out, or I could take as many jobs as I want. And, there were some years where I spent more weekends in conference centers than I did at home,
Mm.
which was interesting years. But, yeah, what's that? There's a Joan of Arc song called Most at Home in Motels. And that's, kind of feel like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I did. And I got into it because actually this talks about the Swiss Army knife with the English degree is I played a lot of Magic in college.
Right.
I was poor. I graduated and I was like, hey, this job or this game is expensive and I cannot play it anymore. I have three options. I could either quit, I could get good enough at tournaments that I start making money so the game
Hmm.
can pay for itself,
Right.
or I could get a job with them
Hmm.
and I could use that job. I can justify using funds from that job to buy magic to
Yeah.
subsidize
Right.
my magic habit.
Right.
And so I just did. I started showing up to events with my resume and my laptop, being like, look, here's my portfolio. I've done this stuff before, and they kept saying no, and they kept saying no, and they kept saying no. And then eventually someone says yes. And then you get your shot, and then, do with it what you can. And every time I tell this story, I have to shout it out. The person who said yes was Tim Willoughby. So anytime I am indebted to Tim Willoughby and I want to shout his name from the rooftops, that he said, look, yes, I'm totally overworked. And this famous artist, John Avon, is here. I'm not going to have time to interview him, but he needs to be interviewed. Like I need to say something. So you interview him, you write up the interview. If it's good, I'll print it. And if it's not good, whatever, I'll throw it away and I'll say you sucked, and so I did it. So I interviewed this guy and then wrote about it.
Interesting. And for those who are uninformed, who's Tim Willoughby exactly?
Oh, he's not a
Just
famous person. I'm
okay.
saying him because I owe him a debt of
Got
gratitude.
it.
Tim Willoughby is someone who is in my position as well. He's from the UK. He worked for Magic for a very long time. He's actually a very good magician as well.
Yeah.
And now he owns a game. He opened up a gaming pub in somewhere in England. I want to say London because that's the only city I know. But now if he's going to get on me about it, but I'm just saying I owe him my entire career. So I want people to know his name, not because he's famous, but because
Well,
I
now
owe
he's
him.
famous.
So yeah.
I will make him famous. No, I'm kidding.
There we go.
Exciting. And so with what you saw with Magic the Gathering, everything that you had, you clearly spent a lot of time playing the game. I mean, what were some of the carryovers that led you towards I Feel Attacked?
Well, everything. Here's the biggest thing. The biggest thing for me about Magic that kept me involved for so long is I was a weekend warrior. A lot of people, as maybe maybe you don't, but you get into a hobby and like that's your life. You're like the
Mm-hmm.
Magic guy, and you like stream Magic, and you like talk about Magic all the time. You buy Magic clothing, and that was
Yep.
never me. I'm a hobbyist. I do different things. I have movies on my shelf, but I also have this book of dictionaries, and I have some games here, and I have like I'm just kind of an eclectivist or whatever. And so, but but so I hung out with a lot of people who didn't play Magic. I did not have a
Right.
lot of friends who played Magic, but they all knew me as their friend who played Magic, right?
Right.
But every time, yeah, every time I would meet someone who like was like, "Oh, you like Magic, right?" Like, yeah, I used to play that when I was in middle school. And then you wait a beat, and there's silence, and then they go, "I had this really cool red-black deck, and there were skeletons in it, and I had a fireball, and like, and then they start yammering onto you about this thing that they haven't thought about for 20 years,
Right.
and that was amazing to me, the emotional resonance, the bond that they formed with this game,
Right.
that they haven't thought about. And
Right.
and so the thing that I think Magic has done better than anything else that they've done, which is like, look, it's one of the best games. The game system is amazing. The illustrations are amazing. All of these things, they've done an incredible job. Like, for a game to last 30 years, and the new set they just released is like one of the best sets they've released in decades. It came out yesterday. It's
Mhm.
Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's incredible.
Mhm.
It's a Japanese cyberpunk set. It's
Oh,
awesome.
cool.
But yeah, it's really cool. But what they do better is the game system makes you feel like your deck is yours,
Mhm.
and you feel an emotional connection to that deck. And so it has people 20 years later remembering that there was a color black that they had in their deck, and they had these skeletons, and they put this thing in it that would do this thing with skeletons. It's like, why would you remember that? And it's because your deck is yours.
Mhm.
And there are so few games that live on with you after the box because you felt that you creatively expressed yourself.
Yeah. Right.
You've created a game avatar in this game, and that's your deck. Your deck is like an avatar of you.
Right.
And they do it so well. And so I tried to replicate that. I tried to get aspects of that in this game,
Mhm.
which we haven't actually talked about what the game is yet. So to
Right. Right.
answer your
Right.
question, I have to explain what that is.
For sure. For
But
sure.
but basically it's a dumb old party card game that kind of feels a little bit like Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity, where you have the rotating judge mechanic. But the idea is every single card in the deck, it's one deck, and it's just it says people who, and then a characteristic or behavior that some people have. For example, you do this. I learned this trick, right? Yeah, people who are constantly late,
Yes.
people who collect vinyl,
Yeah.
people who buy trucks too big to fit in their garage, um, people who are Disney adults who didn't go to prom, who know their Hogwarts house, who smoke. Actually, another one that I designed that got cut was people who really miss smoking.
Yeah.
But like,
The vapors.
well, that's another one. People who vape. I mean,
Yeah. That's basically the same person.
yeah, all right, yeah, exactly. Well, and so the deal is, so what you do is when it's your turn, you pick a card from your hand and you put it face down, or you put it face up, like people who did not go to prom. Then everyone else tries to look in their hand and find cards that they think are most likely also people who didn't go to prom.
Mhm.
And then you put them face down. So I don't know, whatever, I can't think about it right now, but like people who have a hard time getting bank loans, or people who own fancy hats, or people who play Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever. Okay, like people who didn't go to prom, and then the judge kind of picks. And there's also kind of a lawyer like flagging mechanism, like a play review. You can throw a challenge flag if you think the judge's
That's
choice
funny.
is wrong and argue your point. So anyway, all that to say, how I wanted this to feel like that aspect of the emotional resonance of Magic is I am developing and releasing small themed boosters to add to your deck. In fact, the box is this big, but the deck only takes up this much space. And the reason is because it is built to add these little things. And the themed boosters are themes like gamers feel attacked, or military members feel attacked, or lawyers feel attacked, or millennials feel attacked, or boomers feel attacked. And what you're doing is these are basically apply to everyone, right? Like people who get Starbucks every day. Like everybody knows that person. But there are things that in your subculture that hit closer to home.
Yeah.
Right. If you're a gamer, one of the ones when I was going to the game convention pitching gamers feel attacked, this one really resonates with people, is people who lied when they said the game only takes 2 hours. Right. Yeah, see, right? And if you're a gamer, that's hilarious. But if you're not a gamer, it's not for you, right? You
Right.
know, like there are in the lawyer's field attack set, absolutely there is going to be a card that says people who sign their emails, comma ESQ. You know, like and if you're not a lawyer, maybe that's not funny to you, but like
Yeah.
it is funny in the law community, you know, and just like people who lie when the game takes 2 hours. And so the idea is if you acquire these little $10 extra booster packs and fill this thing up, now all of a sudden this box is you. This box has all of the things that make you you in it, and your friends your friends, and when you play it, it feels like it's yours, you know.
Mhm.
And so that's the number one thing I love about Magic, learned from Magic, and then tried to implement exactly in my own game. I knew that took a lot of
No,
predication
no,
to
that's great.
but
I
like
actually, no, no, no. I love hearing that because it reminds me of one of the reasons why I love board games, tabletop games, what have you. Because what I always tell people is you're collectively with other people creating a narrative right before your very own eyes, which I think is because you always have that one game, for example, that one game experience that you always retell. For example, there's a buddy of mine who ended up moving to Italy. He's doing some really cool VR stuff out there, like basically like some stores where you can play like VR games basically. But anyways, one of the things that my family to this day still talks about is, I'm sure at some point everyone has played Risk, right? There's always that one Risk story or two where a table is flipped or something like that. But in this instance, no tables were flipped. But my buddy, his like last stand was it's of all the places that he could possibly hold down, it was Afghanistan.
oh
And
wow.
that was his last piece, but he had just enough resource cards where he took over one person like completely, then took all the resource cards, took over another person, took all their resource cards, and ended up winning the game because of
From Afghanistan, from like
from Afghanistan.
one of the harder to defend territories too in the game. It's not an
Yeah,
easy
yeah.
one.
But
You
it was
know?
just like, I mean, like now that I haven't thought about that since for a couple of years now. That story. Now thinking about this in 2022 after last summer, just sort of like, ugh, like,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, with the way things have been with Afghanistan, it's just sort of rough. But at any rate, it's just what I love about games, because there's a whole social element, and I think one of the things that worried me about the pandemic is, well, one of the things I thought was a bit challenging for me is trying to imagine people getting together, at least at first, to play board games when everyone's kind of encouraged to quote unquote Netflix and chill. But that was a really good opportunity for people to learn about, like, for example, like the Jackbox games. I think those are great
Yeah.
in virtual settings, which I think were great to help pass time.